This call is being recorded.
Okay, let us get started. Welcome to the PDX Mindshare How to Create a Compelling LinkedIn Profile workshop with yours truly, Kent Lewis. I am founder of PDX Mindshare, which has been around for almost 21 years, and Anvil Media. I'm also president, and that's been around for 20 years. And so Mindshare came first, then Anvil, and Anvil is the lead sponsor for Mindshare, which you can find at pdxmindshare.com, which you probably already found because you are found this webinar. And then also on the social at PDX Mindshare across the different social platforms. And then for more on digital marketing, you can go to Anvil Media across those same social networks. And if you're interested in following me, I'm on the Twitter at Kent J. Lewis. And please connect with me on LinkedIn at n/Kent Lewis, or the one of two Kent Lewises from Portland, but I'm the one that'll probably rank higher, and I'm connected with Anvil and Mindshare. So today we're going to be talking about optimizing your LinkedIn profile for just basically covering the fundamentals. And we're going to move to advanced profile optimization to give you a better look at what's going on and to get maximum reach. And then we'll go into the content creation aspect, which is really key to ensuring that you are creating the most maximum reach and engagement is content creation optimization and sharing. We'll talk about some networking fundamentals and how to sell on LinkedIn. And then for those of you impacted by coronavirus COVID pandemic and maybe underemployed at this time, we'll talk a little bit about the new job search capabilities and additional research capabilities to find that dream job. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A, and then we will make sure that we post a copy of this presentation to SlideShare, to our website. We'll reference it on LinkedIn and on PDX Mindshare and Anvil. We'll put it up on the PDX Mindshare YouTube podcast. And we will probably add a blog post recap as well on the Mindshare blogs. You'll see 2 to 3 different form factors for this moving forward. So a little bit about me before we dive into LinkedIn. I've been in the professional world since '94. I'm Pacific Northwest native, and I speak on average about 30 times a year. I've been teaching at Portland State for 20 years as an adjunct. I teach a search marketing workshop, and I write a couple dozen articles a year on a variety of topics that also tend to turn into workshops like these. And I currently have over 18,000 connections on LinkedIn. And our largest client today, I reached out to initially through LinkedIn 2 years ago. And we've landed other clients through LinkedIn sales strategies that I will cover today. If you're interested in the digital dark arts, beyond Anvil's elaborate insights section, scmpdx.org is a great resource. You can check out my class in the CEPE program at PSU on search marketing once a year in the February timeframe. So you got some time. And then I also teach a social media marketing workshop. It used to be in person, it was 3.5 hours. Now it's down to 2 hours online. And I think they may still be free during this COVID crisis. So that's kind of in a nutshell, my credentials. So let's dive into LinkedIn and how I've used it. I have my own view on my own expertise on LinkedIn that certainly isn't all encompassing. I, for instance, am not a power user of groups, which can be a very powerful platform. That said, the LinkedIn group, the PDX Mindshare LinkedIn group is one of the largest in Oregon with over 11,000 subscribers. As more people come in, just remember to mute your speaker. Let me just do that for everybody. Let me see if I can, how do I do that? Okay, thank you, everybody. So we'll move back to the deck. So, all right, so the first and most important part of your profile optimization is your photo and your masthead. So the photo should be professional, not blurry, not a cutout of you and your boyfriend, wife, or somebody else next to you, cut halfway out of the picture. It should be about you. Now, I chose a very unique photo. I'm not very photogenic, and a buddy of mine took this picture in an alley near my house. It's random. We were just screwing around, and it turns out I think it's better than a lot of the stage photographs. I have a standard white screen, white background photo I've used in the past, but it's a little cheesy. I think this one's a little more authentic. And then there's a picture in the background of Anvil's building, where Anvil is located when there's not a pandemic going on. So it helps to define sort of my presence on LinkedIn and defines me. But more importantly, from a professional, high quality photo sets a stage that you're legitimate. And then a masthead can kind of set a mood of your expertise or your current employer or the business if you're an owner. But what matters most really is getting a visibility by having a compelling and searchable title. So below my name, bottom left, is president and founder of Anvil Media, expert speaker, author, and BuzzSumo top 100 most influential digital marketer. So there's a couple of things to point out. One is my current employer. It doesn't automatically mention that. I put it in there. Also, there's buzzwords that are seen as being the most common or most effective, and that's expert, speaker, author are three of those. I do not use the word guru. That's another one that I refuse to use. I can't stand that word. One thing to know when people see your profile is that it'll show where you're, what city you're in, and then how many connections you have. So if you have more than 500 connections, even 501, then you are as high number of connections as anybody can see. They don't know until you're connected how many actual connections you have. So if my advice is, if any of you listening have fewer than 500 connections, race to 501 connections, and then you can dial it back, and then you are credentialed. You also want to include your contact info, typically a personal email address if you want to leave your options open, business email if you're the owner. I always look to guidance from LinkedIn to tell me where my profile can be further refined. But again, your photo professional, your title should be covering any skills, accomplishments, or buzzwords. And then with your bio, which is your first paragraph under your name, it should be in first person. I'm used to writing third person bios for speaking opportunities, but best practice on LinkedIn is first person. I do this, I do that, I've accomplished this. So major milestones, major accomplishments. You might even mention, cycle back any awards or recognition in that summary. That bio should be keyword loaded so that LinkedIn and other tools that skim through LinkedIn are pulling out the relevant keywords relevant to your expertise, your experience, and your knowledge. Below that is typically your work experience, and we'll do a little walkthrough at the end of this, time allowing, where you should include, employer, dates of employment, key responsibilities, and you can always include a URL of that employer. But one opportunity I think is typically missed are metrics and growth trajectory. So you could have one employer where you had multiple job titles. So I would have three different listings for three different titles, and what you were doing under each of those, any accomplishments or key metrics that demonstrate your prowess, recognition, etc. That should be in your work experience. Again, this is still fundamental LinkedIn profile components. Your education, so your major, any minors, any PhDs, any MBAs, you might as well, you paid a lot of money for them, you might as well put them in there. I've also found that rounding out the activities and societies that you were involved with, I was involved with very few, but put them in there, it helps round it out. You never know, this is my experience with resumes and interviewing on both sides of the table, is that connections can be made based on extracurricular activities. Are you a runner? Are you into ultimate frisbee? Whatever it is, you'd be surprised what captures recruiting or hiring managers' eyes. And then the getting more than one recommendation, adding in your own skills and having other people endorse you for certain skills, it just happens naturally. So you can see on the far right, Nathan Webster, who I'm a regular guest on his podcast, he was one of he's given me a recommendation. I believe I've given him one. But what I look for in a profile, if I'm looking to vet somebody, is, are they over 500 connections? And then do they have more recommendations received than they've given? So I didn't realize over the years I've given 79 recommendations, but I have received 93, and I didn't solicit any of the original past maybe 20 of them just to get enough in there. So I think your goal is to have at least a dozen recommendations received and have fewer given that you've given out to be credible. And then skills and endorsements, right? So I have over 99 endorsements. It stops there for like a dozen different capabilities like digital marketing, integrated marketing. So you can suggest skills to be endorsed by others. You can ask them to endorse you. But again, less of an issue if you reciprocate. You just want to get a couple, ideally 1 or 2 skills that you're over 99 at to show that that's really what you do for a living. It may not define you, but it certainly helps people understand who you are. And again, your employer and your school it'll pull in logos to give you a little more credibility on your profile section. So these are all the critical basic profile components that you're going to need to have in your basic LinkedIn listing. Now let's talk about more of the advanced profile optimization. These are the bonus above and beyond that really help round out and differentiate, especially in an economic condition like today. So make sure that you've added your business information or your services if you are the business owner. And if you are looking for a role at a company, looking for a job, then I would complete the recruiter profile. So taking the assessment, and it'll tell you, it'll show which certifications you've completed. So providing services, you can see on the right side, I've added SEO, content marketing, digital marketing. These are services that we provide at Anvil, that I provide through Anvil. And then recruiters, I am not open to new jobs at this point. I'm going to stick with this one until I fire myself. And so in that regard, you can make sure that you take the assessments, and then you can also add in any licenses or certifications. So despite the fact that I don't actually manage ads for our clients, I'm Bing and Google Ads certified, which is just a tremendous honor considering everybody at Anvil is required to be at least Google Ads certified, and I fit right in there. So I walk my talk. Volunteer work, I think, is very important. It shows passion and balance and a little selflessness and a little sense of service. And so, I've been involved with SMART, for instance, for 20 years, was on the board for 10. But there's other volunteer work that I could add that I probably haven't and should. And then accomplishments. So if you've been published, if you've received honors or awards, and I added just a couple, I always constantly test. Every time they add a new functionality or a section, I'll put a few things in just to see how it works and see what it does, because it doesn't hurt. But it all starts with your education, especially if you're right out of school or going back to school. Most people may not be aware, unless they've been through it themselves, is a lot of people go back to school when the economy goes to garbage. The problem is the economy is in flux, and you can't really go back to school. You can go back to online school. So it's a little different this time. Everything's different this time, right? Then adding interests. I think, again, that dimension is important. So who are you following? Tells me a lot about who you are. So which companies, which individuals or influencers, I think that's really important. So, I follow Mark Cuban along with 5.8 million other people, follow Harvard Business Review with 10 million other people. Certain groups you're a member of will tell me, especially if you've engaged in those groups like PDX Mindshare. I encourage you to join the Mindshare group on LinkedIn today. There's a link through pdxmindshare.com, or just Google it. Just search it on LinkedIn or LinkedIn groups, and you'll find it. And it's just a good place to network, especially if you're in the greater Portland area. But there are people from all over the world in the LinkedIn group just interested in networking and growing professionally. So advanced profile optimization, these are the key components. Again, your services or your credentials for recruiters, licenses, certifications, volunteer work, accomplishments, and interests. These are all important elements to add that additional viability and credentials on your profile. Then there's content creation and syndication. So there are a couple different elements to keep in mind that are really around creating content that differentiates you, kind of thought leadership. And this is really just this one slide is a whole presentation I have separately on just being a thought leader, and LinkedIn as a critical place to be there. But before LinkedIn, there was SlideShare, and it's a place to post your PDFs and your PowerPoints and similar content to educate others. and I've been sharing in SlideShare for more than a decade. And you can see here's one for optimizing your online persona, and those feed into my LinkedIn profile. My old SlideShare decks do that, and you can create a SlideShare account and then have it feed your LinkedIn account. And now both are owned by Microsoft, which could come into handy someday. And then there's articles. So I write articles. It used to be called LinkedIn Pulse. It's the blog that is associated with everybody's LinkedIn profile. So you can see there's a screenshot from our Uber conference or Zoom account where we were all talking Friday at 4. And it was my topic for my blog post on LinkedIn was leading through COVID crisis, lessons in agency leadership back in April. And so I typically write probably a couple times a quarter on my LinkedIn account around business and entrepreneurship. My marketing articles get syndicated elsewhere, but I also always share them through my status updates. So you can see on the right side, Insider Radio, that's a status update about podcasts. And that's just an example of a recent post. I like to follow Inside Radio because I am a podcaster and have helped clients develop podcast strategies over the years. And so you can even upload documents. So you can see under your profile, it'll say you want to create a post or write an article. And now you can even add other functionality, videos, images, podcasts. But really, it used to be just articles or posts, and now they added documents. You can actually upload documents. Again, I think this is Microsoft's attempt to compete with Google to create, to generate and curate as much content as possible from the internet in general. So content is really key. If you are, whether you're a business owner with ultimate job security compared to working for somebody else, or totally unemployed, or getting out of college, without some sort of content that you are creating and or sharing, your profile is not going to be seen as much. So of my 18,000 connections, a subset of those will see every time I post a status update, every time I upload an article or post a new article, anytime I add a SlideShare, this content is being shared automatically through the network. Hey, Kent just posted a new article or a new status update or a new SlideShare. And so that's why I have a large network, is I rarely pull in the favors. I mainly just want to be in front of people so that they are more likely to think of us when they need help with digital marketing. And so these are just a couple key strategies for content syndication to think about. Then there's the networking like a pro. So one thing that I do is on the right side, you can see this is a week or two ago, 18,700. I'm at 18,800 now. And I have a bunch of contacts that are connected within, again, uploaded or referenced through Outlook or other platforms. I'm following 84 people, 49 groups, 159 pages, and 16 hashtags. So it just kind of gives you a sense of what a more robust active user on LinkedIn might look like. Some people may have more connections, some people might follow more people, etc. But I think what's interesting is sending daily requests. So the one way to build your network up is to, when you go under the network tab, so next to home, there's a My Network. And when you click on that, you'll see some suggested connections. So Eric Pratt and Danny Daly. These are two people that were suggested to me based on their profession, their location, their proximity, whether I went to school with them, whatever the case is. So all I do is click connect, and it'll send a connection request automatically. And as far as I can tell, I've been doing this for a decade. There's no real limit to the suggested requests, but there are limits when I go out to seek connections. I have to have an email address or be a friend, etc. And LinkedIn, after about 100 requests a month or at one time, they'll tell you slow down, slow your roll, and then you have to wait, a couple more weeks or a month before you go out and create a bunch of new connection requests manually. And you can do that. You can see here, people may know you from Western Washington University, where I went to school, or have similar roles, or from Portland, or from my industry. These are the elements that lead to these suggested requests. But then you can click on all filters, and you can add in a job title like VP of Marketing, or an employer like Nike, or a location like Portland office. And then you can sort your connections by first, second, or third degree. First degree is somebody you're connected with. Second degree is you're only 1 degree away from them. third degree is, man, you probably don't know them. And it's like, that's the rest of LinkedIn pretty much, 500, 600 million people. So again, it's the race to 500 connections when it comes to being credible. The more people you're connected with, the more likely they are to connect with you, the more shared connections. So you can see with Eric Pratt, I have 174 mutual connections. That sounds incredible until you realize I have 18,000 something connections. So it's really not that impressive. But if Eric sees that when I send a connection request, and he's like, "What? How much of a risk is it when we already have 174 people in common for me to accept that connection request?" Probably pretty low. And even at 39 connections, probably pretty likely that it's a low risk. I'm a real person. I'm not a robot. I'm not from out of country trying to, or just a vendor purely trying to sell. And the other thing to keep in mind, when I network, I send connection requests. If it's strategic, I will add a personalized note. If it's just ad hoc, I will just send it. I don't really necessarily care if they connect with me at that point. But the goal is to get as many people as possible on my network that are in my world, my target audience, or my peers, so that I'm keeping my content in front of them with daily posts. I post to LinkedIn status updates on average a dozen times a day, sometimes more, at least roughly once an hour between 8 and 5 p.m. And that's to make sure I'm staying in front of the Eric Pratts and the Danny Dailies of the world in their status, in their update feeds. Like, who is this guy? He's always sharing good stuff. That's my goal with building the network. Other people network just to sell. Others network just to network to get a job. But this is how I've done over the years, is get a ton of connections and then ask very little of them, except for maybe once or twice a year when I reach out. And we'll get to that on the sales side of things. So basically, what I'm suggesting you do in terms of how you manage your profile on LinkedIn is monitor and respond to notifications. So if you see here on the right, there's messaging. If people message you with emails, you can see that this is an example pitch I sent to Don Varga, who's head of global marketing, VP of global marketing at a company. I said, "Hey, Happy New Year. This is in early January. Hey, do you have 20 minutes to talk? I found at 15, in my experience, doesn't sound believable. 30 sounds too much of a commitment. And what are you doing for 2020? Maybe I can help." And keep in mind, I was originally advised by a sales consultant advisor of mine, one sentence tops. And I really had to work hard to keep it to